My name's Doug Siddons. I'm a sound engineer and I hire out loudspeakers, run gigs, and I am a freelance self-employed, but I go under the name of Maltings Audio. 2002, 2003. I was working for a PA company in Midsummer Norton. They unfortunately were wound up, and so I thought, okay, well, let's go out and do what I've been doing, go out and do what I can do. I started out with the intention of being small, anything that went in the car, because I had friends with big rigs, and it was cheaper at that stage for me to hire them in than have my own gear. But as work progressed, I needed to buy and invest in my own equipment, and so that's what I did over the years to get to where I am now. Well, I've always been involved in music ever since I was 12, and I was a guitarist, and I discovered that playing in bands, guitarists and musicians didn't know how things worked. I was always interested in the technology side of it, and how things went together, and I found that I was more in demand for making things work, putting things together, and the PA engineering just sort of naturally came from that. And then you discovered that there was more work going out making things louder than there was actually playing. Well, the biggest change is the availability of the equipment. So when I started out, when Maltings started, we hadn't had the digital explosion, and so therefore you had a desk with 8 channels on it, or 16, or 24, or 32, and then you had a separate rack of all your processors, your compressors, your limiters, your gates, your reverbs, whatever. They had to be patched in. And as an engineer, you grew up thinking, well, I've got 32 channels and I've got 4 compressors, 4 limiters, 4 gates, 1 reverb in the rack. And so you had to make that work. And it did. Nowadays, digital desks have arrived with effects and reverbs and gates on every single channel, compressors. So that has, I think, made it sound better. It's also given you more opportunity to screw up. Engineering music production has become a thing in education, but suddenly music is being taught, and music production is being taught in schools to a great degree. So kids now come out of school having learnt what they want, and they expect to have everything they've learnt at school in front of them when they play or when they work. And if they haven't, it all falls over. Well, music has evolved. The standard of musicianship has gone through the roof. Again, coming back to the fact that education has seen it as a proper thing, so they are putting effort into getting to see people perform. There's also this instant fame thing, this karaoke thing, come through, so everybody thinks they can sing, but they can't. You've had to put up with a lot of that. But you see that, as with music in general, you see the genres come and go. So the Britpop's been through, the metal's been through, the singer-songwriters come through, then we've got the dance and the trance, and the DJs have suddenly come through. And then there's this mishmash of everything going together, and people now are sort of searching for a way of what's the next big thing. We've had Ed Sheeran, we need to bring our own thing to the table. I think one of my most favourite shows that I've done is what I call guerrilla religion, and it was the Seventh-day Adventists in Bristol, and they would find a space, a green space somewhere. They'd hire us in, and we'd put the gear up, and then we just blast out their wonderful singing and their religious tracks into a village green in Knowle, or a park up in Fish Ponds, and just go there, be there for 3 hours, attract a noise, or get the message across, pack it up and go away. That was just absolutely fascinating, because there was a commitment there. There was wonderful singing, and 9 times out of 10 we were dragging power out of the toilet. it's just a great fun. Well, it starts with an email. It says, "Can you come and do a show?" Yeah, okay. What is the venue? How many people are you expecting to see? So if you're getting 50 people, 100 people in a pub, then it's a small system. If it's a big hall, the systems get bigger. So we need to know how big a system we need to take, and that's done by communication. We then need to know what we're dealing with. So we'll ask let's say it's a promoter. We'll ask a promoter to send us through the tech spec of the band playing, so we know that there's bass, drums, guitars, keyboards, etc. So we then say, right, we need that many microphones for that, those microphones for this equipment for that, there, etc. We then need to know from the band what they expect to hear from themselves on stage. So they'll send us a list saying, well, actually we want 1 monitor, 2 monitors, 3 monitors, 4 monitors, 5 monitors, all using in-ears. And once we know what we've got to take, then it's going into the garage, pulling out the equipment, making sure it works, making sure everything's clean and tidy. Obviously, in this day and age, we're also taking extra sanitising equipment with us for the COVID risk. So we get to the venue and we set the equipment up in the venue. So it'll be the front of house speakers, the monitors on stage, the microphones, and the desks. And then the band will turn up and do what's called a sound check, where they will run through 2 or 3 numbers so that everything they've got works, and I'm happy with the sound. I've got an idea of what I've got to produce out front, and we've also mixed it back towards the musicians so they can all hear what they want to hear. Now that can take anything from 10 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the band, depending on their professionalism. Yeah. Yes, it's always easier to work with people who experience gigging and know what it's all about, and know what to expect from the equipment and what they can hear and what they can't. It's the people coming through who don't have an idea, don't know what can happen, and they take the time to get themselves right and happy in the space. Well, it goes like this. The sound check finishes usually, hopefully giving us half an hour before the audience comes in. So when the audience comes in, we put on background music and we sit around then waiting for something to happen. Then when the show starts, we have crew on stage watching what's going on to make sure that nothing falls over and everything keeps going. And I'm at the front of the house. I'm listening to everything that happens for the performance. I'm probably the only person in the room, barring the musicians, who actually listens to every instrument, every nuance, every ching and chang, because that's got to be right. And I'm adjusting and playing with it as I go through. Now, from my point of view, working with original music is great fun. It's also a nightmare because we have no idea, you have no idea what's coming and how it goes together. So you're on the fly, you're on your metal, you're just waiting for the change, waiting for something to come in, waiting for that, and that's what keeps you alert. That's what you're doing. When you're working with a covers band, it is easier because you know the material that's coming at you, so you know when the crash is and when the light and the shade should be. But you also, I don't want to blow my trumpet here, but you're also, being a musician, listening to what they're doing, you're also sitting there as a producer trying to make it better. So you hear somebody doing something, let's say it's a guitar line or a guitar solo, and you think, well, okay, I need to make space for that. I need to add reverb when the solo's on. When it stops, it needs to come out. When there's two vocalists there, one's slightly higher, I need to keep the levels right. And okay, one's going for it, and then one isn't. It's listening how it's going together and trying to make it better than what it's coming out at. Usually, at that point, we have to wait normally until whilst the audience is filing out of the show. We are then packing down. The first thing to do obviously is turn everything off, and then everything has to be repacked properly back into its flight cases. So a typical show run with a band on will use somewhere in the region of 30 or 40 leads. Each one of those has to be individually coiled and taped and put into its place. The microphone stands or the microphones have to be put back into their boxes, checking for any losses, checking for any damage, so that it all gets packed down into one big pile where everything is properly. If we don't pack it down properly at the end of the show, the next time it goes out of the garage, we're going to have an issue. Obviously, we check it before it goes out, but it's quicker and easier to pack everything down properly. And then once everything's packed down, it gets loaded back into the truck. Now, a loadout normally, if it takes usually 2 hours to get the gear into a venue and set up, a loadout will probably take an hour and a half. There are two sides to sound engineering. There is the theoretical side and there is the practical side. My experience and what I glean from is you cannot do one without the other. And the best option, if someone's thinking of doing it, is to go and volunteer on a crew and do the loading the trucks, packing the gear, unloading it, cabling, everything. If you can, get a summer or get a year's worth of just going out, seeing what it's like on the practical side. Then when you come into the studio to learn the theoretical side, you've got a much better idea of why you're doing things. It's all very well saying, you record this track, you set this up, you do that, the other in a classroom. But the actual why you're doing it is difficult to translate unless you've actually been sat in a field watching it happen and go through. And I would also say that it's a job that you've got to be committed to. It's not, you've got to be prepared to give up on, if you're going to do it properly, right, then you have to work every show. That means weekends, that means late nights, early mornings, that means a lot of travel. And if it's Granny's birthday and you've got a gig, you're going to miss it. And you've got to be prepared for that sort of thing. My favourite part about it is when you do a show and there is the magic coming off the stage when everybody's connecting and the audience is there with it and everything's happening. And you're doing there, just making that little bit extra so that everybody can hear what they want to. And the greatest compliment I can get from a musician is, you made it sound how I wanted it to sound. That's what I do, and if I get that is the greatest feeling. The worst bit is 3 o'clock in the morning in a festival tent and it's flooded, or 12 o'clock at night, you've had a great show, everything's cool, then you've got to load the truck, which is going to take another 2 hours, and then you've got to drive another 2 hours home, and so it's going to be 5 o'clock in the morning. You get the truck loaded, you start going home, you think, I'm hungry, I want something to eat. Where do you go? What do you do at that time in the morning? How do you do it? It's just there's little niggles. The other worst part about it is a catastrophic failure. I've been to shows where something simply hasn't worked, and you've got to work your way around it. If it's a light, if it's a stage box, that's cool. If it's a desk, you should have some backup or whatever to get you through. You know, it's a knife edge. Well, it's all about communication, and it's all about compromise. And you've got to tell the sound engineer what you want to achieve, how you want to sound, what you've got to use and how you want to use it. And then the sound engineer will say, well, that's great, we can use this, we can use that, we can use that, we can use it all, or we can't, or there's some stuff that simply won't work. And you've got to be prepared to compromise. The other piece of advice is know how your equipment works and know if it falls over, what's likely to fall over. But I think the biggest problem affecting the industry before COVID is, I honestly think it's got too big and too technical. I grew up going to see bands in village halls and halls where you had 200, 300 people, probably 1,000 people in. Now people are going to festivals and basically watching television. They're not seeing the band, they're seeing a TV screen, and they're hearing it. They're hearing it well. But I think that has to change. I think it has to go back to more grassroots. With the equipment becoming cheaper, you need to have a look at the quality of equipment is cheaper, microphones are cheaper, but their quality isn't the same. You can buy a loudspeaker that's for 100 quid, you can buy a loudspeaker for 500 quid. There is a reason that it is more expensive. Is it because it sounds better and lasts longer? In my job, we have to hit every job that we do and everything has to work. So therefore I can't afford to buy cheap speakers that might let me down. Everything in the garage is of professional quality, so it will work all the time. With COVID, the industry shut on the 1st of March and everything was off. Now, one of the issues with musicians is we love to play and entertain people, and so we're quite happy to go out and do it for nothing. But there is also the other side of it, of people who put stuff on, do it for a living. That living disappeared on the 1st of March. I think you're going to have to compromise and have to look at what you expect to earn just to keep going and keep doing what you want and hope and pray the good times come back. The panacea of all this is as soon as we get a vaccine, then hopefully we'll be back to normal.
Party on.
Party on, yeah. But it will start in small and kind of the big stuff back. I think it'll be a long time before we see the big stuff coming back.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Absolutely.